let's just sew whatever.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be making one of my new sewing patterns, which is the Victoria wristlet. Victoria is my middle name, so that's where the pattern name came from, as well as this accent panel that I just kind of thought up. Anyway, so this is a really good pattern for beginners. It's pretty easy. I wouldn't say it's great for someone who's literally never sewn before, but of course this video we're going to talk about it. So there's a zipper on top, and I believe in the pattern there are instructions on how to add card slots as well. I say believe because I haven't finished writing the pattern before this video is being filmed, so it's a surprise. Even I don't know. But this front pocket is really cool. It's got two magnetic snaps on the top so that you can put your phone inside and it won't fall out, which is really nice. And yeah, that's not my phone. It's an empty phone case because I film with my phone, so enjoy that. The top zipper does have zipper tabs, so I show you guys how I do those. And this is Zipper by the Yard from My Handmade Space. And then I lined mine with waterproof canvas. You do not need to, but if you decide not to, you'll definitely want to use maybe some extra woven interfacing just to give it a little more body. And then I added a wristlet strap with fabric I made from the exterior, and I interfaced that with just one layer of woven interfacing. Was that necessary, Ben, to shake my camera? Well, come here. Ben, do you like my pattern? He's like, please just let me down. Do you like it? Okay. You do? He said it's nice. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little video on how to make it. And don't forget to subscribe. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start with my wristlet strap. I decided to use a coordinating fabric instead of a vinyl, so I went ahead and interfaced this with a woven interfacing. And I'm going to fold the top edges at about 1/2 inch so that there's no raw edges, and then I'm going to fold it in half and then fold the raw edges in. So I'm going to go over to my iron really quick. And if you feel like 1/2 inch is just a little too thin for you for a wristlet strap, you can bump it up to a 3/4 inch wide wrist strap and use a 3 inch wide piece instead of a 2 inch wide piece. So I'm just folding my raw edges into the center and adding clips. And then with that top edge folded in, there are no raw edges, so that's always really handy. And then I'm just going to stitch along one side and come back to the top and bottom using a stitch length of 4.5. So now I'm going to feed this through my snap hook, then bring one side down, and now you can add a rivet through these, or you can choose to sew through it. I'm just going to sew through it. I'm going to make a little box stitch then you can do one little diagonal line. There we go. So there is our wristlet strap all made. Again, if you wanted it to be 3/4 of an inch wide, you could use a 3-inch wide piece, but it's cut to 16 inches, which I think is a fine length for a wristlet strap. So I'm just gonna set this aside, and we're gonna work on our D-ring connector. If you decide to not use vinyl for this piece, you will wanna interface it and double the width. I'm just gonna use a piece of double-sided tape and fold the raw edges in along the 3-inch side so that it becomes 1/2 inch wide by 3 inches long. And then top stitch along either side. And then I'm going to slide my 1/2 inch D-ring through, and I'm going to baste along the bottom just to kind of hold it in place. And then I'm going to set this aside as well, and we're going to work on our zipper now. I'm using zipper by the yard, so I'm going to need zipper tabs. If you've got an exact 9-inch zipper, you really don't need 9-inch zipper tabs. You can just kind of fold the edges at a 90-degree angle. But I'm going to go ahead and fold this in half and then fold in the raw edges towards the center. It's a 2-inch square, so either side is no big deal. There will be a lot of excess, but I'd rather this be bigger than you need than not have quite enough. So we're just going to encase the fraying end in it and add a clip. Oh, make sure it doesn't shift. And just sew along that edge closest to the zipper teeth. And then repeat for this side. Just encase that within the zipper teeth. Okay, and now we can trim our excess threads, and we can go ahead and cut off the extra zipper tape. Alright, so now we have our 9-inch zipper ready to go. I'm going to set that aside for now, and we'll go ahead and grab our snaps. I'm using 18mm. You could even use 14mm or possibly 10mm, but those are really, really tiny guys. So I've got my lining from piece 2, the outer pocket, and I'm going to take my washer and a little marking pen. I'm going to go ahead and line up the center of my washer with my center marking and mark 2 parallel lines for each one. And then I can seam rip that open. And I'm going to add the male snaps to this piece. Put my washer back. And then we're going to go ahead and take the piece that we want our pocket to be over of pattern piece 1. And this is the one with only 1 layer of interfacing, and then you can add scraps of woven interfacing to reinforce where the snaps are going to go. And we're going to add the female snap pieces on this one. If you have thin magnetic snaps, those are gonna work really well for this as well, so they're not so bulky. Okay. Good job, good job. So now we're gonna take our pattern piece to the V-shaped pocket, and we're gonna add pattern piece 3 over the top of it. If you need to, you can use a basting spray or double-sided tape to help keep it in place. Or you could even use a glue stick. I have none of those things, so I'm just going to keep it in place with my clips, because that will work just as well. If you decide that you'd rather use a woven piece of fabric right here, you will want to print out 2 of these, or cut out 2 of these, and then put them right sides together along this part. And so there, and then flip it, press it, and then have your raw edge up at the top, and then put everything together. So that's not in the pattern because it's a little confusing, but if you need to do it, that's an option. So I'm just basting at a 1/8 inch, just really close to the edge. And along the bottom is where you want to take care with your stitching around this side, because you will see this when your pocket is finished, unlike your stitching at the top. So go nice and slow. If you need to, you can hand crank at the corners so that your stitching doesn't go past where it should. So pivot and finish it off. Oh man, I'm obsessed with this vinyl with this print. This is gonna be mine, baby. All right, so now we can add our lining piece right here. I'm gonna clip it from the front side, so that way when I flip it over, I can see my existing stitch line and I can just kind of follow along that. We're gonna use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so basically you're just gonna follow the edge with your foot, the sewing machine foot. And you wanna take care to pivot the right spots. Watch out for those magnetic snaps. If you're using a walking foot on a regular machine and it's really bulky, you might want to switch to a zipper foot for this spot. And then make sure you reinforce those stitch lines with a little back stitch at the beginning and end. And now we can trim it. What you want to do is basically just cut through your 2 stitch lines. Cut in between, not through them, I guess. And be really careful at your corner. Okay, goodbye basting. And now we can flip this piece out. If you're having trouble getting your corner to look nice, you can add just the tiniest little snips into that V. Okay. So now we'll push those corners up. Try not to use like a blunt object or anything, just use your fingers if you can. And see if it's puckering there, it's because we need to snip that a little bit more. So I'm just gonna turn it back the way it was. And I'm gonna use my scissors and just really gently just snip right next to it. You do not wanna snip through the thread though. And that should help it sit a little bit nicer. Yeah, there we go. Push all those corners back out. And then roll the seam in between your fingers and add clips to the top edge and the side edges. And then I'll go ahead and clip everything else together. If you've got excess lining showing, that's okay. We're just gonna trim off the excess at the end, so not a big deal. All right, so we're gonna use a stitch length of 4.5 and top stitch about 1/8 of an inch. Again, watch out for those magnetic snaps. And pivot where needed. And then at that V, pivot again. And then we'll baste stitch along the edges. So that happened because I sewed past the edge and then my feed dogs ripped the thread. So if that ever happens to you, now you know why. Not a big deal. We'll just go back to where we were. Okay. So there is our outer pocket. I'll go ahead and trim my excess lining. And we can lay this on top of our exterior piece with the other magnetic snaps. And they should snap right into place. And we can clip it together. And now we can grab our snap tab and measure 2 inches from the side. I was looking for this, 2 inches. And then we're gonna lay this over top and keep about 1/2 inch within the seam allowance. So it's gonna overlap along the edge, just like that. So we'll baste everything together. And then if you want this to be a little firmer, you can add some non-woven interfacing, like if you have any Decaville Light or maybe some 809, just remember that 809 might cause it to get a little wrinkly. But there you have your outer pocket. And then once we add our lining to this, it's gonna add a little more weight as well. So we can go ahead and grab our zipper. We're gonna center it along this panel. And you can find the center by folding them in half and lining them up. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And I'm gonna clip it down. And if you need to, you can baste your zipper in place. I know in the written directions it says to baste, but you don't have to. It's just for beginners so that your zipper doesn't get too wavy. And then we're gonna lay our lining piece right side down as well. So wrong sides should be facing out and all the right sides are facing each other. And we're just gonna sew at 1/8 or a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay. And now we're gonna fold the lining up and the exterior down. So they should both be facing right side up, and then we're gonna top stitch through that seam allowance. So the seam allowance should be facing the exterior panel. Just gonna top stitch whole way. And then we can press it from the lining side really quick. And then I'll go ahead and grab my exterior other panel. Hi, Ben. We'll lay that over top. Clip that in place. And add my other exterior panel face down. And then again, a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then if you need to, make sure you move your zipper pull out of the way. Keep your needle in the fabric and just kind of lift your foot up. Readjust your layers. And then I always like to keep my zipper zipped when I top stitch, just so nothing gets wonky. And then again, my lining is facing up and my exterior is facing up, and I'm stitching through that seam allowance. If you find that you prefer your lining to be stitched, you can put them wrong sides together and stitch through. Just make sure that you start at the zipper tabs and end at the zipper tabs. You don't want to sew all the way, or it'll start to get kind of bunchy when we go to sew everything together. So I'm just going to press it again from the lining side. And here is everything we should have done. We've got our pocket attached, the D-ring on, and we're going to unzip our zipper about halfway. And we'll bring our exterior sides together. Make sure that your D-ring is inside. You don't want it to be folded and get caught in your seam allowance and then break a needle. That's never fun. So I'm folding my zipper tab into the lining, and I'm lining up my exterior main panels. Again, zipper tab into the lining, matching up my main panels. And everything should lay pretty flat, so I'm just going to clip around the edges. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the exterior, and you can kind of gradiate your seam allowance to about 3/8 of an inch when you're in the lining, just so it's a nice snug fit. So we're going to start at the bottom of the lining. Make sure you leave about a 4-inch opening, and we'll backstitch and pivot at the corners. I kind of put my finger on my zipper tab like this, so I can kind of eyeball where I need to be so that I don't sew through the zipper tab. So I'm just right next to it. And then again, make sure your D-ring is pointing in and not going to be under your needle. And I add a little bit of a backstitch over that attachment to reinforce it. And pivot. And pivot. And again, my finger's on my zipper tab, so I can kind of eyeball where I need to be so I'm not sewing through it. And then gradually make your seam allowance a little bit wider. And then we've got our opening. So we can trim our excess. I'm going to start at the corner and cut it off at a 45-degree angle. And trim everything else down, especially at that zipper. It can get a little bulky. And then you can choose to not trim off all of the excess of your wristlet strap connector, just because you want to make that a strong piece. Cut through all that. Trim our extra threads. throw it on the ground, sweep later. And then just kind of double check, make sure that all of your edges are caught, everything's sewn nicely, and then we can birth it. So we'll unzip our zipper all the way and grab a bottom corner and push it through. Just pushing my thumb along that corner. And then again, repeat those steps on the zipper tabs. You want to kind of put your finger up against it and push out and up. That's kind of an important step for a zipper so that it doesn't look bunchy again. So it should be a nice tight fit. And then we'll repeat poking out the corners for the lining as well. I'm just using my thumb. And then put all of your excess fabric from that turning hole inside and kind of press it. Readjust the exterior a little bit. And then we're going to sew up the lining. Trim our excess threads. And then we're going to stick the lining back inside the wristlet. And poke those corners into each other. If you want to square the bottom of this wristlet, you could just have done that before you sew it closed and turned it, of course. And then she's all done. You can just kind of press it a little bit. And you've got this really big front pocket with 2 snaps. So if you want to add your phone, there is room. But yeah, that's it. Isn't it so cute? So I hope you guys enjoy this wristlet. And I can't wait to see what you guys make. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. And don't forget to make sure that you're subscribed as well. The link to purchase this pattern is down below. I hope you guys enjoy it so much. And you could even add a pocket to the back based on the new instructions. And just look how pretty it is.